welcome to a special episode of the Family Based Pod. My name is Jake, and here we have again, he's guest hosting with me. And can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, what's going on? I'm Jake, also here in Chicago, longtime Cub fan, season ticket holder. Excited to talk about the nonsense they got into this offseason.
Man, yeah, it is quite a lot to talk about. So, I mean, we kind of got the Jake Cub fan show going on. If you're listening, subscribe and rate us wherever you're listening. It helps people find us. Also, if you're watching, subscribe, like, comment, all that garbage that you know what to do, but just go ahead and do it. Also, Instagram, TikTok, going to be in the bottom right-hand corner of the video, so check us out there. All right, so again, like Jake said, we're both Cubs fans, both from the South Side, which is interesting that we're Cubs fans, but either way, we talked about that last time Jake was on. And the Cubs this offseason, we're going to have a deep dive into everything Cubs, their offseason moves, their pitching, their starting rotation, bullpen, their potential lineup, prospects, and make just what we think about the future. So, Dick, I know you have a lot of the details down for me, so I would mess it up royally if I attempted to do it. Or at least I would mess up something and someone would give me grief. So why don't you go through and just mention the off-season moves?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start with the players that, well, actually, I'm changing it up on myself. I'm going to start with the players who left. So I'm just going to run through the players from last year's team who left, which I think kind of sets up nicely some of the moves that they made. So players who left. Jason Hayward got released. Hayward now is with the Los Angeles Dodgers. He signed a minor league deal with them during the offseason. The big one, Wilson Contreras. He received a qualifying offer from the Cubs, as expected, knowing what he could get in free agency. His first year of being a free agent, he went and signed a free agent deal with the Cardinals. He got a lot more money in a longer-term deal to take over Yadi's spot. So sadly, we're going to see him a couple times a year this year. Clint Frazier, he left the organization near the end of the year. He was just a free agent. Rafael Ortega, who was one of the hottest bats at one point, I think it was last year, 2 years ago. Interestingly enough, he got non-tendered, so he just wasn't offered a contract. Frank Schwindel, first baseman, he signed with a team in Japan, so he's off to play in Japan this year. And then the last really big name was Wade Miley, left-handed starting pitcher. He hit free agency and got a pretty good deal elsewhere.
Yeah, he went back. He went back to Milwaukee, right?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I believe so.
Okay.
And then players who came in, players who resigned. So Ian Happ avoided arbitration, which I thought he would for sure go to arbitration, but he signed the deal that the Cubs tendered him. Braylon Marquez at one point was one of the top pitching prospects. Last year he battled injuries and a little bit in 2021 too. So he has been struggling to come back, but the Cubs non-tendered him a deal, which just means they basically a pre-arbitration contract. They didn't actually offer him one, and he cleared waivers, and then he came back to the Cubs on a minor league deal. Cody Hoyer. I always butcher his last name. He came over in the Nick Madrigal deal. I think 2 years ago. Relief pitcher. He was out with Tommy John all of last year. He signed a deal and avoided arbitration. I'm high on him. I think he's going to be good next year. Nico Horner, who really came onto the scene last year and had a great year. He avoided arbitration. He got his deal done. And Brad Weck, who is one of those Rowan Wick and Brad Weck.
Yeah.
He was one of those left-handed relievers out of the pen. He signed a minor league deal, and
Cool.
then they had a pretty active offseason. When you take it
Yeah.
all as a whole, I remember during the offseason, I was having arguments with my dad, and we were both kind of, it wasn't really even an argument. We were both kind of on the same page where we thought we wanted the Cubs to be active, and they were active, but they just like weren't getting the players that we thought that they should be targeting, if that makes sense. And
Yeah. Yeah.
but when you look at the whole picture, they actually they did what we wanted them to do. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
they went and filled holes. Uh, there's a common, other than a couple of people in this list, there's a common theme where a lot of them are kind of prove it deals, where
Yeah.
if they're competitive and some of these prove it deals work, they're going to be a good team next year. Uh,
Yeah.
could fight for a wild card. The division also is pretty terrible. So, I mean, 86 wins, 87 wins may win the division. Um,
Yeah.
but also, like, in the same breath, if some of these guys have good years, but they can't string together wins and they're losing a lot of close games, or they're far out of the wild
Yeah.
card in June, a lot of these guys can be flipped for more prospects. Because I
Yeah.
really do think they're 2 years away. I don't
Yeah.
like. I think next year will be interesting, but I really think they're 2 years away. Uh, so I'll get into it unless you have anything, Jake. I can just jump right
No,
into it.
I mean that's a very good summary. Overall, is that yeah, for the most part, they have like those prove it deals or those seasoned veterans coming in to fill a spot, not for a long term, but just to see what they got left, see if they can kind of help and plug in, maybe leave some of those younger guys in there to help transition. But yeah, I mean, they did have some bigger moves as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll start with some of those deals that I think are in that prove it deal category. So the first, and I think he's kind of the not kind of, I think he is the headliner of this category, is Cody Bellinger. So this was
Yep.
a deal that kind of surprised me a little bit when it broke. I didn't really think that they had a hole here for for a left-handed bat in the outfield, but I was in favor of it. Like I liked the deal. He's been kind of bad the last 2 years. The power is still there. He's hit for
Yeah.
power each of the last 2 years, but his average has fallen through the floor. Uh,
Yeah.
he plays pretty good defense in center field. He can also play first base.
Yeah.
And left-handed bats at Wrigley tend to do well. So he signed a
Yep.
1-year deal, 17.5 million, uh, and then he has a mutual option for 2024 for 25 million, or the Cubs can buy him out for five. And then he has a bunch of
Yeah.
incentives that are laid in the contract too. But I like the
Yeah.
Bellinger signing. Um, if he goes back to that MVP form, Cub fans are going to
Yeah.
love him. What do you think?
Yeah. Even if he returns to like halfway MVP, I mean,
Yeah,
that's good. I think he's a plus defender in center field. I don't think he's a Gold Glove, but I do believe he's solid. For sure. But man, we do look at his numbers. I think it was last year. I'm sure he had home runs and some doubles. But now he's not going to have the shift, which is going to be big for him. When his on base last year was around 260. I mean, on base, not average, on base 260. I mean, if he returns to like, on base 310, 320, average like 240, 250. I mean, and you play good defense, that's a win for me. I don't expect a lot, but I mean, just halfway a decent offensive output would be great. And again, it's only 1 year, and they have a bunch of prospects in the outfield. So, if he doesn't do well, it's not going to kill you. But also, if he does well, I mean, that's going to help you for sure.
Yeah, the last 2 years, his on base were both sub 300.
Yeah.
2021 was a rough year for him. He did battle some injuries in 2021. He only played 95 games,
Right.
but some of that was also self-induced because he was just so bad. He did play a
Yeah.
bunch. He did play a bunch last year, and
Yeah.
last year, so the the thing that worries me, and I do think some of this is due to the shift. So in his career, I have his numbers pulled up right now. In his career, his hard hit percentage, if you really want to dive into the Sabres, his hard hit
Yeah.
percentage is historically around 40%.
Mm.
So 2020, it was 38, which at the time was his career low until 2021. It dipped all the way down to 30. And his medium contact percentage shot way up.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping some of that, because he's a dead pull hitter, like 45% of the time, that stayed consistent. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping some of it was due to the fact that they were shifting so extremely on him. So no
Yeah.
shift now. Hopefully shouldn't improve those numbers. So it remains to be seen. I mean, his strikeout percentage was way up.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say is that if Bro cannot swing at the high fastball, he'll be okay. But man, if
Agreed.
he swings one time at a high fastball in the game, he's gonna strike out 3-4 times. It's rough to watch at times. But again, it's 1 year. We'll see.
Right. Yeah. So I'll move on to the next guy, kind of in that category. Uh, Similar position. Well, in terms of they both play first base, is Eric Hosmer. So Eric
Yeah.
Hosmer, famously from San Diego Padres, who signed that who has the best agent in the world, of course, it's Scott Forrest, got him that $144 million deal in San Diego a couple years ago. Granted, San Diego has shown the past couple years here that they don't believe that money is an object to them.
So real.
So he signed the $720,000 deal. So he signed the veteran minimum. So this is a true prove it deal where he's now well into his 30s. I think he's in his mid 30s now.
No, he's only 33. He's only a year older than me. Okay.
Oh, he
he's
is
not
only
that
33.
old. Yeah.
Oh, I thought he was older.
Yeah, I don't know.
But he has definitely fallen off some. Again, some of that could be due to the shift. But to me, this is kind of a no risk deal. If he goes back to Eric Hosmer of old from his Cincinnati Reds days, or not Cincinnati Reds, Kansas City Royal days,
right? Yeah.
Then great. He can be flipped. And if he's Eric Hosmer of recent, you cut bait with him by July and you bring up Matt Mervis. I really thought that the Hosmer deal was really a kind of an insurance policy against Matt Mervis.
Yeah.
Where this now gives him an excuse to mess with Mervis' service time and keep him in AAA next year out of camp. And if Hosmer goes bad and goes bad quickly, they probably cut bait and they bring Mervis up. So to me, it's kind of it's a deal it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, the one thing I thought about Eric Hosmer, the only thought last year he had like 268 or something on base of around 320. But the most important thing for me was with the other signings in Nico Horner and Christopher Morel, which we'll talk about later. They need a good defensive first baseman, and he's a good defensive first baseman. So,
agreed.
Dansby Swanson has had Freddie Freeman and Matt Olson, 2 Gold Glovers at first base. So I'm not saying he's, obviously bad or something. Nick Horner's bad, but you need someone who's at least going to be a transition. And again, overall, I thought, okay, is he good with the glove? And by the numbers, he's at the very least league average, if not, you could say plus still. So yeah, no major risk outside of him just bombing out and making it look bad. But yeah, so I'm not mad.
No, and also let's think about quickly since Rizzo left, who has been manning first base. We have Frank Schwindel. We have
Yeah,
Alfonso Rivas. We have Franmil
yeah,
Reyes, Patrick
yeah,
Wisdom,
yes.
David Bodie,
The boat.
and Jan Gomes. Like,
Yeah,
it's not great.
yeah. No, it's not. Eric Hosmer, at least with the glove, is going to be good for the team, and I think he'll be good in the clubhouse. So good for
Yeah,
him. Good for the Cubs.
yeah. So the next guy that's an approve it deal, who I think is who I didn't even realize they made this deal, and when I saw his name listed on a when I discovered it before doing research for tonight's episode, was Brad
Yeah,
Boxberger. So Brad Boxberger
yeah,
is a crafty vet out of the bullpen. Played for the Mariners. He played for the Brewers. I don't remember who else besides those two, but I remember specifically those two. I believe at one point he was an All-Star. So like last year, if you remember, the Cubs had David Robertson.
yeah,
The difference being Robertson's a closer. Boxberger, I think, has closed, but typically just comes out of the pen. But
yeah,
they're similar to me, where they're both crafty veterans who had a down year a couple of years ago, but then last year Boxberger had a great year. Last year Robertson had a great year. Um, he signed a 1 year, $2.8 million deal. He has a mutual option for 2024. I mean, historically,
yeah,
the Cubs, we can talk about the bullpen in a minute, but historically, the Cubs, uh, what Jed Hoyer comes from the Theo Epstein school of bullpen, where they kind of put together an island of misfit toys that just happens to work out. This is historic.
right.
They're historically good at finding cheap,
Weird
crafty
guys.
veterans, weird guys, almost like Moneyball when what's the guy,
Yeah,
the
Houston
submarine
Street.
pitcher from
Was that
the
was that Houston Street?
no, I'm talking about from Moneyball,
Oh,
where A's found that submarine pitcher
yeah,
with
you're
Chad
right.
Bradford, where
Yeah,
he's good, and the only knock against him was he throws funny. Like the Cubs
yeah,
historically found some guys that are good, and for whatever reason, just have never gotten their shot until they came to Chicago.
yeah,
Boxberger is actually good, but my point is, like, on its face, you're like an aging reliever. Like, do you really want
yeah,
to do this? But it's like he's going to be good. Like,
yeah.
it'll be okay.
Yeah, he's not a household name, so
Right.
I mean, I was aware that they got him, but I was like, one, who? And then, is he good? And yeah, I mean, if you look at his career, I think it was started in San Diego. He went to Tampa, Milwaukee, and maybe someone else. But either way, I think he's been pretty consistent. He's so this is one thing that is good, and I think it's a good point in what you said about finding some weird, kind of funky guys or kind of unknown names and putting them in there. Is that last year he was not asked in Milwaukee. It was Josh Hader and then Devin Williams. He wasn't gonna get many saves. I think he only got like 1 or 2 saves. But he also wasn't like the setup guy, so he's a middle of the game. If someone's having a rough game, you put him in, and he's pretty solid. He's solid, so I like that about him. And again, in Cubs fashion, they signed a guy to a cheap deal, and hopefully he'll play over his deal. So again, not a lot of risk.
Right. There's not a lot of risk associated with many of these deals. The next
Right.
guy, and so it's a theme. Most of the guys fall into this bucket. Is Trey Mancini, 2 years, 14 million, with an opt out after 2023. So if he has an amazing year, because he was hot last year, he was great for the
Yeah.
Orioles before Baltimore traded him to Houston, and then he was great in the playoffs. He'll play a lot of first base too. He'll DH. He can also play the outfield. Trey Man, it's a high floor. I would call it like instead of having a low floor and a high ceiling, he has a
Right.
high floor and a low ceiling. Like he's going to be drafted.
Yeah. I mean, all of his talent aside, his story, his comeback is insane as it is, and you could argue that the Astros wouldn't have the World Series if he didn't make that defensive play at first base, stopping a hot shot down the line by Schwarber, stopped at first base, and it looked like he just fell over on the ball, so it didn't look impressive, but he made the play when it counted, and he was there, and he didn't get a lot of at-bats with the Astros, but again, I mean, the veteran guy, high character guy. Also, I think he was a Cubs fan when he was a kid, so bring him back, and you never know what that's going to do for someone's like year career. You never know. So, yeah, again, not a lot of risk. And if they don't want to have him back next year, or he doesn't want to come back, that's fine. But I think you'll get at least a good clubhouse guy with he'll come up in some big moments.
Yeah. I mean,
Hopefully.
Yeah. I think it'll be. It's a fine deal, not a lot of risk. I'm good with it.
Yeah.
Moving on to we can talk about Jameson Taillon. So former Pittsburgh Pirate, New York Yankee, 4 years, 68 million. He had a good year last year. Cubs historically have done well with developing pitching. The Cubs have historically, at least the last, I don't know, call it 10 years or so, maybe a little bit less, has one of the best pitching infrastructures in the MLB. So I think this is another guy, like when they get their hands on him, like they'll be able to develop him even further. In Pittsburgh, he was really good, but he just pitched for a bunch of really bad Pittsburgh teams. And then Yankees fans loved him. Yankees fans
they're all bad.
Yeah. So
true.
And the cost of starting pitching nowadays, like this is a good deal. It's about what a guy like him should get. I think he's 30. He might be 30. I'm gonna look
30. He's 30. He's 31 as of right now.
Yeah,
so
31.
In the middle of the year, he's younger than me. Okay, he's okay. So
yeah. So it's another one of those deals where it'll be this will. I'm excited about it. I like the signing. Yankees fans were upset when we got him, so that's always a good thing too. Yeah,
it's always a good sign when the team that doesn't get him back, like the fan base wants him back. Always a good sign. Again, he had a career year last year, but he's 31. He's not. Maybe he's in his prime. Maybe he's just getting there. But hopefully, 4 years you get something. But I don't know about immediate impact. But hopefully he'll continue to get better. So, 4 years. That's not a 1 year deal. So hopefully he'll be good right away. But if not, he'll get better over time. So,
he stays healthy, and one of the ways that or one of the things that I compared this to when the signing happened, and my dad was asking me about him, was if you remember, I think it was 2013. It was either 2013 or 2014. The Cubs signed Edwin Jackson. This is a better version of that
Yeah.
deal. So Edwin Jackson, he was a known commodity at that point, and he wasn't all that good. He could show flashes of being good, but the Cubs
Yeah.
were still a couple years away, and they basically just needed a guy who can come in, be solid, and eat innings. And that's what
Yeah.
Tyone's going to do. He'll be the number 2 guy, maybe number 3, and he'll be right in the middle
Yeah.
of the rotation, and he'll be better than Edwin Jackson was. But he's going to eat innings. He'll probably pitch 180 innings this year, 190. Guys don't pitch 200 anymore. But in today's game, 180 innings is a bunch.
Yeah, I think last year he hit like around 170. So if he hits that or 10 more, I mean, that's good. Just Cubs pitching needs to last a bit longer. Their starters.
Yeah.
So if he can do that, I mean, that's great.
One guy I forgot to talk about. Well, there's 2 guys I forgot to talk about. One I'm not really going to touch on that much because there's not really much to say here. Is Drew Smiley. Drew Smiley, 2 years, $19 million, opt out after 23. Mutual option in 2025 in the 3rd year for $10 million. He was a buyout that year too, or Cubs can buy him out for 2.5. Lefty, it's pitching depth. Drew Smiley's a $19 million insurance policy. He pitched for the Cubs last year a little bit and was good. He's kind of a crafty, soft tossing lefty. It'll be kind of meh. Not a lot to say. The one that I do want to spend some time on a little bit, not because of the name, but just because this is going to bring up the biggest gripe that I have with the team right now, is Tucker Barnhart, catcher.
Yeah.
Former Reds catcher, 2 years, $6.5 million.
Yeah.
Jake, who the hell is playing catcher this year?
I don't.
Who's the starting catcher?
I really don't know. And I mean, this is the exact reason I was saying keep Wilson Contreras.
Yes.
You don't know what you have. It's like, all right, so maybe Tucker and Jan will be good defensively. They're good with the pitching. They'll make them. But on most teams, like, you know who the starting guy is. And this team is like, who do you want to start?
None of them.
I mean, at this point, I think their starting catcher is it will be on opening day. I have no idea how they're going to use these guys. I mean, maybe Tucker is really good with pitchers who have sinkers. I don't know the reasoning. I honestly just thought they don't know the answer. Jan Gomes, I think his contract ends after this year. So giving Tucker giving the Cubs one more year to figure out if Miguel Amaya or someone else, or if they need to sign someone. But, well, man, I mean, as you were talking about the Wilson leaving, it's a dagger in my heart. So I have no idea, bro. Who knows? I mean, opening day, Jan Gomes. But what they're going to do the whole year, I have no idea.
Yeah, no, I'll talk about it a little bit more when we talk about the lineup in depth, but because I'll really get into it then. But what I'll touch on here while we're talking about it is, I thought the fact that they didn't even really try to re-sign Wilson Contreras was really a bad mistake. Clearly, things really went sour from 2021 when they were trying to have contract negotiations, and Contreras had a really bad taste in his mouth during trade rumors, which I don't really fault the Cubs for how they handled it. I more fault Wilson there. But in the same breath, like look at the top teams in the MLB and who they have at catcher. They all have catchers who can hit. Atlanta has Wilson's brother, has William. The
No,
Dodgers
he's
have,
in Milwaukee.
or in Milwaukee now, but
Yeah.
he was in Atlanta.
Yeah.
The Dodgers had Will Smith, and they now I think they have another guy who is younger than him, who I think was a rookie. I don't know why I'm picturing that. Phillies had JT Realmuto. So like Cardinals had Yachty when he was in his prime. He could hit, but down the stretch he was pretty bad when he played. So it's like,
Yeah.
if you want to be one of those top teams, you got to be able to hit from the catcher position. And Jan Gomes and Tucker Barnhart aren't the answer. Jan Gomes is a very good defensive catcher. The pitching staff loves him. The stats, the Sabres last year between Wilson Contreras, games where Contreras caught and games where Gomes caught, and the difference in starting pitching stats was stark. There was a big difference between the two. But at the same time, it's like, what are we doing? Like, Miguel Amayo's been hurt. He had Tommy John surgery, I think, either last year or 2 years ago. So you don't have a good option anywhere. That's still a really big hole you got to fill. Like Christian Vasquez was available from Boston. He went to Houston. I really wanted Christian Vasquez. I thought he was a great fit. He's not a 280 hitter, but he's going to hit 255, 260, which Barnhart and Gomes aren't going to do. Like, so I don't know. I'll talk about it more when we talk about the lineup. And then, the last guy, they signed Fulmer today. We don't know the contract details yet.
Yeah.
A guy who I just wanted to mention, who they got on a minor league deal, old friend Sergio Alcantara, if you remember him from a couple years ago. Cubs re-signed him on a minor league deal. And then the headline of the offseason was shortstop Dansby Swanson, who, interesting enough, well, it's not really interesting, but worth noting is his wife is a soccer player for the Chicago Red Stars. So he already had a connection to Chicago. He signed a 7-year, $177 million deal that's going to take him through his age 35 season. So I think there's at least one opt-out in there. But if he doesn't opt out, he'll hit free agency again when he's about to turn 36. I like the deal. Yeah. I would have liked to see them go after one of the other shortstops. I wanted Correa. So did everybody else. But we wanted them to make a splash. We wanted them to get one of the big shortstops that were available of Correa, Bogarts, Swanson, and Turner. And they got one of them. They got Swanson. What are your thoughts on it?
At the All-Star break last year, I said Dansby Swanson. For one, because I knew he was dating Mallory Pugh, and then they got engaged in the second half last year. And he's big on family, and I knew he would be the cheapest of the options, and the Cubs are not going to spend $300 million on a player. They're going to spend $177. So Dansby's last year he won the Gold Glove. He's won in college. So everyone always says he's a winner, and he's like a leader in the clubhouse, and he's only 29, right now. So, I mean, I wanted him to come. I thought he'd be a good fit, if not the face, one of the faces of the team. I mean, a shortstop who can hit 25 home runs, hit like 280, around 280, and be a Gold Glover. I mean, that's a good, solid, like, plug in your offense. And the Braves definitely, he thrived with the Braves for years. And I wanted him to come. And when they signed him, I mean, you can imagine I'm also a big Chicago Red Sox fan, so I was already a Malpew like fanatic. But I'm like, bro, husband, wife of Chicago being here. So I wanted him. I'm glad he signed. And I'm also glad they didn't like hit like 200 mil because for some reason that would like flip people out. So I'm happy that they got the deal done and that you'll see him this year. I think hopefully playing pretty well.
Yeah, yeah. One of my good friends at work, who used to live in Chicago when I first started at my job, he was in the Chicago office, but he's since moved down to Atlanta. Uh, he texts me all the time about Braves stuff. He's become a big Braves fan,
Yeah.
and he texts me all the time during the year about love Dansby Swanson. We Braves fans love Dansby Swanson. He's the best. He's the best. He's the best. And so Braves fans love him.
Yeah.
Like in terms of like what he got comparison to the other guys, like he got what I think is equitable to his comparative value to the other guys. Like,
Yeah.
is he a top cornerstone guy? No, but he didn't get paid like one either. So, but
Yeah.
he's still, but that doesn't take anything away from him how good he is. Like he's extremely good. Like he's gonna thrive at short in Chicago. Like you said, he's gonna hit 25 home runs. He's gonna play great defense. Like so, it's like what else do you want? Like
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
question to Cub fans who like are like, well, it's not Correa. It's like, but he checks all these boxes. So what else do you want?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the first shortstop that went off the board was Trey Turner, and he signed
Right.
for 300 mil. And Dansby has comparable, not obviously better, but comparable, if not somewhat equal, and sometimes better than Trey Turner at the plate, and he's a better defender. So, I mean, I didn't want to have someone sign for 10 years. I think those deals are just insane
Mm-hmm.
overall. So 7 years, 177, with who you're getting as a person and someone on the field. I mean, overall, if people are complaining about it, they have no valid points. So,
No, I agree with that.
um,
The only thing I will say is you do got to feel a little bit, even though he's taken it in stride and has been great about it. You do got to feel a little bit for Nico Horner, where
yeah,
he
yeah,
had a awesome year last year. He was outstanding and at shortstop and played great defense at shortstop. And just because of the guys available and getting the best guys available, he's going to have someone come in and take his job. And like, he's more than willing to move over to second base. And like, it's not like he's not going to start. He's going to start at second base every day
right.
and play shortstop when Swanson gets a day off. But it's like you played quality shortstop that most teams would kill for, and then the team still goes out and signs a guy that's going to take your job on day one and force you to a new position.
Yeah, yeah, no. I mean, again, on the podcast we are having that discussion the whole year, and then when it came time to it, it was like, I mean, you are. I would say he was the second best defensively behind Dansby.
Mm-hmm.
Offensively, he doesn't hit for power. He gets on base. He hits for average. He hits all sides of the field. All that's great. When you can bring someone like that, it's very hard to not bring in someone who. I think Nico is going to be a solid part of the lineup, but he's not going to be a threat like in a base, two guys on, like, 2 outs. who are you more scared of, Dansby or Nico?
Right.
It's so yes, but also remember Nico. The one year I think it was 2020 or even the year I don't know. When Javi was on the team, he was a Gold Glove finalist at second base. So
Right.
I mean, he's still going to be good.
Yeah, and I don't remember what the quote was exactly, but he was asked basically about like the fact he had such a good year, and then the Cubs still went out and brought in Dansby Swanson to the position that he was playing and forcing him to move. He got a question, something along those lines at Cubs convention, and his answer
Yeah,
basically was, "I was a part of the pitch team. Like I was actively trying to bring this guy in. Like I wanted him to come to
yeah,
Chicago because like he's like I get it. I like
yeah.
I'm more than happy to go play second base every day."
I mean, that. I mean, to have I know defensively a catcher, you don't know who it's going to be, but having Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, and Cody Bellinger, that's a really good up the middle.
Yep.
So that's good for everyone.
Uh, do you have anything else on the on some of the moves, or should we jump into the pitching?
I don't think I have too much. Some of the signings I have thoughts about, and
Yeah.
it affects like pitching and lineup and all that. So I'll get to that for sure. Starting with the pitching. So how about this? Let's if you well, I'll ask you the question first. Is that do you think the starting rotation at the beginning of the year will be the same at the end of the year?
No.
All right, so why don't you do this? Why don't you share what you think opening day rotation will be, and then I'll share mine, and then at the end we'll share what we think is going to be, last day of the season.
Well, yeah. So first thing I want to say about the starting pitching, I think there's realistically 11 guys on the roster right now who could make a start at some point this year, at least 11.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
Going into this year, they definitely went quantity really over quality. That's not to say that there's not quality in that rotation, but
right,
but and I understand it because I think last year in particular, at times the starting rotation depth was really strained, and they were bringing guys
yeah.
in like I think Mark Leiter Jr. made a start at some point, and
Ugh,
he's bad. Uh,
don't remind me.
uh, they brought some guys in to make starts who just frankly aren't very good, and the only reason why they made starts is because they're starting pitchers in their organization. So
Yeah,
to answer your question though about opening day, so opening
yeah,
day I think is going to look like this. I think that's going to be. I think Marcus Stroman is your opening day starter. I don't think that's really a question. Um,
no,
he's the most talented starter on your staff, and that's who gets the opening day start.
all right,
Um, Kyle Hendricks is probably going to be your number two if he's healthy. Drew Smiley or Jamison Tyon, I think those are your three and four. Put them wherever you want. Depending on like I guess matchups at that point in the rotation of do you want a righty or a lefty going in that first in that slot. So those are your three and your four. And then five, I think there's three guys who are going to fight for it really in camp. I think those three guys who are going to fight for it are going to be Adbert Alzolay, Justin Steele, and Keegan Thompson. Out of those three, gun to my head, who do I think is going to get that fifth spot? I think it's going to be Justin Steele. So I
yeah,
think Justin Steele coming out of camp on opening day is going to be your fifth starter. And then like your sixth man, like first guy off the bench, I think is going to be Adbert Alzolay. He was hurt last year, but in 2021 he was very good. 2020, I think, was his first year that he came up. He was very good. Uh, and he has said as much, like how disappointing last year was because he was hurt, and how he really wants to make a comeback this year and be the guy that the Cubs think he can be. So I think he's your first guy off the bench into the rotation. And my hot take out of these guys is I think Keegan Thompson doesn't make a start. I think he stays in the bullpen. I think he's going to be one of the best relief pitchers in baseball next year. And the Cubs are just going to want to use him in high leverage situations out of the pen. The guy is a maniac. If you've heard him talk about pitching, the guy is like, what do the kids say these days? Like, he's got that dog in him. Like Keegan Thompson. That's Keegan Thompson.
Yeah. No, I agree. So I'll share my 5 real quick. I think Stroman. I think Hendricks. I think Drew Smiley hits number 3 slowly because you don't want to me. Well, I'll just say I think he'll be 3. 4, I think, is Italian. How do you say his name? I always mess it up. Can you please?
I messed it up too.
Jameson. James. See, I got that wrong. Jameson. Okay.
Yeah.
So Jameson will be 4, and I don't think it's competition. I feel like they want him to be there. I think he has the best immediate chance of being quality is Justin Steele. I think that he would have to bomb in spring training and like almost be like he can't get now to not get the 5th spot. So I think it's pretty set to me. And again, the reason why Drew Smiley is 3 is because you don't want him and Justin Steele to be back-to-back lefties.
Right.
So I think it'd be those 5. But all right, so I'll just say that. But let me get into this. So you said, quantity over quality. So my thoughts are they have. I don't know if it's 11, but my gosh, I am like, my hot take is if I was one of these young pitchers, in some sort of way, I'm a little upset they signed Drew Smiley. For this reason, I know for winning sake, of course, you want to have guys going to be in there and take innings for sure. But if you're one of these young guys who came up in the second half and really helped the Cubs have a good second half, which convinced Dansby Swanson to come to the team overall, some of these pitchers are not really going to get a chance to start consistently, and I think that kind of holds back their development overall. So that's my big. So, like, I think you said it, Keegan Thompson. I think he was lights out last in the bullpen. I think he can make spot starts, but I don't think he's going to be a long-term starter. They called up Adrian Sampson. He did pretty well last year in the second half. Javier Assad, Hayden Wesneski, and
Wesneski.
Yeah, I know. So that's my point, is that you have I think Alcalay is going to be in the bullpen. One, because he has a very hard time getting any lefty out. He gives up so many home runs against lefties. I feel like they might try to start him in the bullpen and see if he can maybe get that spot start to see what he can do. So I think Adrian Sampson, Javier Assad, Hayden Wesneski, and maybe AAA Killian, but really those 3, Adrian Sampson, Javier Assad, Hayden Wesneski, I'm like, bro, like, I would kind of be a little upset that Drew Smiley's there for maybe a year or 2, and is going to take up a lot of their chance to develop as a starter. And I have faith in those 3. One of those 3, I'd say Hayden Wesneski is more of a sure bet, but I like Assad too. I understand that, but in some way, like I want those guys to get quality quantity innings,
Yeah.
and they won't get that. So I mean, but so I think at the end, starting rotation will look different. But that's my hot take, is bro. Like I'd be a little upset if I wasn't going to get the ball every five because of Drew Smiley, and no disrespect to him, but I'm like, pitchers want to have the ball in their hands, and
Right.
those three are not going to get much of a chance.
Yeah, no, I think that's 100% fair. Hayden Wesneski, I went to so last year, one of the games I went to was actually his first major league appearance. I went to his first major league appearance
Yeah,
last year and his first major league start. Uh, well, really his first major league appearance, if I'm remembering right. I don't remember who started. Someone started, either they kind of got blown up a little bit, and maybe the first couple innings, or they got hurt. And Wesneski came in like the third inning and pitched like 5 innings of shutout ball, maybe one hit. Like the kid is good. Like he's going to
yeah,
be very good, and he was great last year. Um, the wild card in the rotation to me is really twofold. It's the Kyle Hendricks question.
yeah,
Can he get back to some shell of his former self and stay healthy?
yeah,
And then Marcus Stroman. Is
yeah,
Stroman going to take a step forward? Historically, guys who sign kind of bigger deals in free agency who are starting pitchers, uh, their first year is pretty subpar, but then they get used to playing at Wrigley, they get used to Chicago, and they come around a
yeah,
little bit.
yeah.
John Lester is the perfect example of that. John Lester in
Right.
his first year of his deal, I think was like 13-12 or 13-11, and had like an ERA close to 4.
Yeah,
And then pretty much every other year up until he got old and fell off, and his arm died, he was awesome. He was a sure bet
yeah,
every year to be great.
yeah,
Um, so I think Hendricks needs to stay healthy, and Stroman needs to take that step back towards New York Mets Marcus Stroman, and,
yeah.
and Toronto Marcus Stroman. Uh, and if both those things happen, I think that's when you see the Cubs start to fight for a wild card spot.
Yeah, no, I agree. Of the two, I have the more time that goes on with Hendrix, is that the more time I genuinely don't know what to think. Is he an ace? Is he middle of the rotation? Is he the bottom of the rotation now? I mean, the last couple of years, I mean, he had one really good year, like standout year, but really, the last time he put up, wins and ERA and innings pitched was 2016.
Yeah,
I don't, I don't, I don't love. I love like his style. I love he's different than everyone else, but he's so inconsistent at times. It's hard. Um,
so
so he's the one I have a lot of questions about.
so it's interesting that you say that, because I'm an unapologetic Kyle Hendricks supporter. I
Okay.
love Kyle Hendricks. Um, and let me so Kyle Hendricks, I think, is an interesting case. So I think he came on so hot because he came up in 2014. He was acquired in 2013, I think, in the Matt Garza deal. And when Garza got shipped to Texas, I think that's where he came. Uh,
Yeah.
and so he appeared for the first time in 2014, and he made 15 starts or so in 2014 and was good.
Yeah.
2015 was the year where 2015, I think he had an ERA like around 2.5 maybe. He was good in 2015. 2016 was the year where he almost won the Cy Young when he had an ERA, I think one of those 2 years, he had an ERA below 2. It was like 1.9. The other year, he had an
Yeah,
ERA around 2. And then since then, like, he hasn't been bad. He's been, I think he just came on so hot, and we wanted him to be that next ace, and that never
yeah,
materialized. Because for like a guy who's like a 2 and a 3 starter, he's been pretty good. His
yeah,
style of pitching, so early in the year with his style of pitching, because he's a weird case where because his ball has so much movement and he doesn't throw hard at all, he almost needs to get kind of that movement on like on his cutter, on his fastball, on his changeup. He needs miles on his arm and kind of like wear on his arm to kind of get the arm action he needs to get that movement. So, like, if you look at his historic numbers, other than when he first came to the major leagues, it's a pretty. I mean, I can pull it up in a minute, but it's a pretty stark difference historically in his career. His first half versus second half. His first
mm,
half, April, May, uh, the 2 months where he gives up the most home runs in his career is April and May. I think in 2016 he gave up 2/3 of his home runs in the year in April and May.
yeah,
And later in the year is when he really kind of comes into his own.
mm,
Uh, and now that he's much older, he's now, I think he's almost in his mid 30s. I think he's 33.
yeah,
Uh, he his differential between his fastball and his off speed has narrowed, so he needs to find movement again, and he just needs to stay healthy. I think if he stays
yeah,
healthy this year, like, is he going to be 2016 Kyle Hendricks and post a 1.9 ERA? No. But is he going to be? He'll post something between a 3.5 and a 4, and he'll keep you in ball games. He'll pitch 150 innings. He'll average probably 6 innings
yeah,
a start, and
yeah.
we'll call it a day, which to me is fine. Um, but you need him to stay healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely needs to stay healthy. So in 2015, his second year in the league, he had it was actually just under 4 ERA, and then 2016, the year that really everything clicked, he had a 2.13 ERA, 16 wins to 8 losses, and he let me see. He only gave up. He's one of those pitchers that gives up a lot of home runs.
Mm-hmm.
He just is. When he misses, it's slow and in the middle of the plate. And 20 early in his career, he didn't give up a crazy amount of home runs, but the last 3 or 4 years, he has really given up a lot of home runs and a lot of hits, and um, yeah, and he's not been healthy. So I think so 2020, that shortened season, he had like 2.8 ERA. And again, during the COVID year, everything is a small sample size, but did pretty well overall. Um I'm just, I feel like if he I don't think he deserves to be number 2 anymore. I think he should be a 3 or 4, but his upside is high. So you just don't know. So I think at the end of the year, their starting rotation will include Hendricks for sure, but I don't know how high he'll be next year. Let me, if unless you have something else on Hendricks, let me try to pose my end of the year rotation.
So yeah, just quickly on Hendricks, splits between his first half and second half. I pulled
Yeah,
those up real quick. So first half of in his career, first half of the season, historically, Uh, where is it? He's given up 93 home runs in the first half in his career.
Yeah.
His uh, strikeouts per nine, never really been that high, but his strikeouts per nine in the first half are 7.28. His home runs per nine are 1.2. And his xFIP is 407. In the second half, comparatively, he's given up 57 home runs. So he's given up 57. His strikeouts per nine are a full 0.3 higher, 7.5. His home runs per nine are less than 1. And his xFIP is under 4, is 376. So historically, in the second half, he is a better pitcher. It's
you just got to get
about health. It's just about health.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and if the Cubs are doing well in the second half, it'll be really good to have a healthy Hendricks in the second half for sure. So I think it'll be the rotation will look different in one way. If I have to, I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say someone's getting hurt. I'm not saying who, but that's always a safe bet. So, but what I'll say is that if everyone's healthy, but what I think is going to happen is Showman will stay in the top. Hendricks hopefully will be healthy and be there. If Smiley doesn't have a second half like he had last year, I think he gets bumped to long relieving. And what happens is Hayden Wesneski gets that spot. I mean, I don't know if it's the third spot he'll get or like they'll mess around with the rotation, but I think Drew Smiley, he'll drop to either he'll become the spot starter or the long reliever. And I think Wesneski will get like critical starts down the stretch.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple names who I think you have to look out for who from the minors may get called up to make a start or two. So I think one is Ben Brown. Brown, I think, is a dark horse. He came from Philly. He came over in the David Robertson deal. I'll talk about him more when we talk about prospects in the future. But he's major league ready and a decent right-handed pitcher. You already said Wisniewski, and Caleb Killian's the other guy. Caleb Killian's not going to break camp with the major league team, but I think he's probably, other than like let's say Hendricks gets hurt, Wisniewski has pitched 2 of the last 3 nights. They don't want to turn Thompson into a starter because he's dominating out of the bullpen, and so they're going to look into the minor leagues and call someone up to make a start. It's going to be Caleb Killian. So I think I agree with you with Wisniewski. I think one of Killian, Wisniewski, or Ben Brown ends up in the rotation at the end of the
year. Yeah. I mean, personally, I know it's slanted, but I really want Javier Assad to get in there because he's Mexican. He has dark rimmed glasses, and he does not look like a typical starting pitcher. So I love to see him get called like a start here and there. And again, he was good down in the second half and pitched well against really good teams. But yeah, no, I do think the minors are gonna produce spot starts for. I mean, you could, when we talk about their prospects, you could argue that like 4 or 5 may get a spot start to see if they, can get high or something. But yeah, Wisniewski is the bona fide. Like, if someone gets hurt and he gets in, it's going to be hard pulling him out.
year.
So, but yeah. So, I mean, so overall, I want to even talk about the bullpen solely for this reason is that It's really just like we said, it's a bunch of misfit toys, and they're just gonna play around with it. We don't know who the closer is, if there is gonna be a guy, or who's gonna be. We don't know much, but I mean that's one of those areas of the Cubs that they never seem to get like fully right, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I don't know. Do you have something to say about them?
I think the closer job is going to be Cody Hoyer's when he gets healthy. He had Tommy John, I think, 2 years ago now, so I think he's due back middle of the year. He's
Yeah.
not listed on the depth chart right now, interesting enough.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of the job they're holding for him. I think the guy on opening day who will be the closer, my guess is probably Boxberger. I think just because
Okay.
he's the veteran, he's closed before. He was I looked up his stats earlier. He was an all-star for Tampa, saved 41 games that year.
Mm.
He's only closed twice in his career, like regularly, but both times
Yeah.
he had over 30 saves one year and he had over 40 saves the other year. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
at least temporarily until he blows a couple games in a row, I think it's going to be his job to lose until Hoyer comes back.
Yeah. I mean that's fair. But yeah, why don't we? I knew that us talking would turn into a longer conversation because we're only pitching and it's an hour in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I knew what you said before, like an hour, and I was like, I mean, we may go longer. So
Well, I didn't
Buckland,
know. Yeah.
yeah, Buckland, we're only like 2 of 5 categories in. So let's try to chop it up a bit faster on it. So
Yeah.
the lineup, the open, whether it's opening day and end of the year, it's going to be different. Stuff happens, but what do you
Right.
think is the opening day lineup? Because that can get changed around. People can't. I mean, you can go for a couple guys that lead off. You can middle of the order is going to be interesting. But what do you think will be opening day lineup?
So I could do it two ways. Do you just want me to go position by position, or do you want me to go like batting order?
Why don't I mean, I think in some ways we know who's going to be in the positions overall. I mean, outside catcher, but I mean, if you'll indulge me real quick, it's going to be Hosmer first, Nico second,
Ooh.
Dansby.
See, I mean,
Dansby.
ideally, I want Mancini
No.
first.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would not, but so yeah. Why don't we just do that real quick and say that? So I'll go Hosmer
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
You'll go Mancini.
So in my notes, I not even just to play contrarian. In my notes, I have Mancini listed at first. Uh,
What?
I think it's going to be Hosmer. I agree with you that it's going to be Hosmer, but I think this just speaks to I'm not high on Hosmer at all. I think Mancini is the better bat, so I would like to see Mancini at first. Uh, Hosmer's the better fielder, so that's probably what's going to give him the start over Mancini.
Yeah.
Um, it I guess it's really a question of what's my ideal opening day lineup, or what is the opening day lineup going to be? Because if it's what is the opening day
Yeah.
lineup, it's going to be probably Hosmer.
Well, what do you want?
I want
You
Mancini,
want?
but it's probably going
Yeah.
to be Hosmer.
All right. I mean, I'll just say I think it will be a Hosmer, and I think it should be. Again, I made that point. I think it's defensively. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to help the guys at least to transition to Mancini. Mancini even last year didn't play. Played I think 40 games at first base. He played left field, right field, DH. Sen Hosmer is solely a first baseman or DH.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna give it to Hosmer, and I think it'd be good for the defense. So
Yeah, no, you're right, but it's my bias against Eric Hosmer that's definitely speaking.
yeah, I mean
I think
you're more than welcome to have some.
uh, I think the most interesting position is third base. Who do you think is going to be the starting third baseman?
I think it'd be Morel.
I have Morel too. I think it should be Morel. I think it should be Morel at third, and I think Wisdom should be the DH.
Hmm. Yeah, see, that's where the Mancini Hosmer thing splits for me. I think in some ways Patrick Wisdom is kind of out of the lineup, and I think because Mancini's bat is good, I think it's maybe not as good as Wisdom home run wise, but overall better. Definitely better average
Mm-hmm.
on base. So I think Mancini will be DH. But man, I mean, Wisdom. I think Morel gets the start up with Wisdom at third. You got to give him a chance.
I agree.
Like he's not going to play up the middle anymore. He's got to play third base or a corner outfield, and third base is the best one to go for.
Right. No, I think he's more than earned a chance to play every day, and third base makes the most sense.
Yeah.
The rest of the lineup, I think, kind of falls into place. Horner at second, Dansby at short, Happen left, Bellinger in center, and then Suzuki in right.
Yeah. I mean, that's.
I don't think there's any argument there.
No. I'm just intrigued what the heck they're gonna do with Madrigal, because I mean it'd be interesting to see if they don't if he says he is willing to play wherever, but I don't know. But I think the lineup or the depth chart, the positions, it's pretty set after that.
Yeah, I'm looking at the depth chart now. Madrigal's not even the second baseman on the depth chart. Warner is
Ooh.
listed obviously as the starter. Morel is listed as the backup, and then Madrigal is listed third.
Yeah, I mean that's not good for him.
No, I think they trade him. I think they try and trade him, and he's not going to be a headline for a deal, but I think
No.
in whatever trade they end up making, they say, all right, if we give you Nick Madrigal, will you give us your 165th ranked pitcher?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, pretty much.
A top 100 pitcher?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I mean, I'd be fine with that. I mean, you also want him to get a chance. He's not going to unless someone gets injured. Unless Dansby gets injured and Nico goes over or Nico gets hurt. I mean, he's just waiting for someone to get hurt. And, I mean, that's a great place to be. So, I don't know what they're. Yeah, but the rest of the lineup, I think, is pretty much set. Catcher, we have no idea. First base, a little bit. First base, DH, and third. I mean, we'll kind of see.
Yeah, I think catcher is going to be Young Grams. I think he's just using the same logic to have Hosmer be the starter. I think lends you to Young Grams. If you're going to go for defense, then it's Grams.
Yeah, and also he's been there for a little bit, and I mean, clubhouse likes him. Everyone knows him. Again, at least at the beginning of the year, most consistently, it'll be Youngums. What do you think about the lineup? We won't get into the minutia of who's fourth and who's fifth or whatever, but maybe 1 through 3. Like who leads off, who hits second, who hits third. Because I think that's at least good debate. Not debate, but discussion.
So I think leadoff. I think there's two guys in this lineup who could lead off. Uh, I think it could be either Nico Horner. I think Horner can lead off, or I think Suzuki can lead off.
Hmm. Interesting.
So out of looking at it, because this has been my biggest gripe with the Cubs in general and the depth that they've had since they got rid of Dexter Fowler, is the
Yeah.
last regular stereotypical you go we go leadoff hitter that they had was Dexter Fowler. Since then, it's been a plug and play mess of
Yeah.
Kyle
Yeah.
Schwarber, of
I
Anthony
mean,
Rizzo, Javi.
yeah.
So so out of everybody who we just listed, Nico Horner is the most similar to a typical leadoff guy, and
Mm.
just going by straight on who I think is going to have the highest on base percentage. I think the next guy that makes sense just in terms of getting on base is Suzuki. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, who do I think I'll go with? I think Nico. I think overall, but I mean, so this is where, again, if you're watching this far into it and you're whatever, you're a little bit nerding out on the Cubs. So I'll nerd out a little bit on this. So Suzuki and Horner. The big thing for me is on base percentage. I don't know about hard hit rate. I think that's important for a leadoff, but not as much. Pitches per at bat, I think, is really important. You want to see pitches. You want to give them a chance to report to other guys how he's doing. I think Nico is a better fit at leadoff, but the numbers say that his rookie year, Suzuki has more pitches per plate appearance, has a higher on base, and I mean, last year he only hit 14 home runs, which is not crazy. It's not a little mild, but I mean, but who do I want to see? I mean, I guess I would go with Nico, but again, the numbers could give you easily Suzuki.
So Suzuki, so a lot. I know plenty of Cub fans last year who were not high on Suzuki after the year that he had. He did battle a little bit of injury issues, but one thing that I think is worth keeping in mind with Suzuki. So first year coming to the States, taking that into account, and the fact the style of baseball between the U.S. and Japan is actually the style of pitching is very different. So in Japan, they just really move the ball. They move it in terms of like placement side to side, but in terms of like the actual break of the pitch is only really up and down. So it's only really a lot of 12-6 curveballs. It's a lot of changeups, a lot of splitters.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff that breaks that way. What they don't have in Japan is they don't have a lot of stuff that cuts side to side. So they don't have a lot of guys who throw sliders. They don't have a lot of guys who throw cutters. So that amount of movement and obviously in the MLB you have guys who do all of it. And not to, like, as Joe West would always say, blue umpire lives matter or whatever, but umpires in the game we know are human, and we see plenty of times where we're shouting at our TV because either a called strike 3 happened and the ball was 5 feet outside, or a ball 4 happens and it's over the middle of the plate. So Suzuki is such a patient hitter that knows the strike zone so well, and he started to do this a little bit better at the end of the year. But if you look at the first half of his season and his swing percentage on pitches outside the zone, it was nothing. It was well below major league average. And so a lot of times where he would strike out looking, it would be on those pitches that were close to the corners where he thought that they were outside, and they might have been outside by 6 inches. But major league umpires are going to call that a strike every time. And you have catchers
Yeah.
also are much better at framing pitches. So I think there was an adjustment there where he needed to get used to the horizontal movement, and he needed to get used to the fact that these umpires aren't perfect and they're going to call pitches outside the zone.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Suzuki had, I think it was a little bit less, but almost 2 times as many strikeouts as Nico. I think Suzuki had like 110, and Nico had, I think, a little under 60 or something like that. And
Yeah.
so in some ways, do you want your leadoff guy to strike out and kind of start that? I would say Nico starts off at leadoff. I would say that.
Yeah.
But you could easily pick Seiya, and I would say, yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good.
Yeah.
So who do you think though?
I think it's gonna be Nico. I think Nico starts as leadoff. If Suzuki makes an adjustment and gets hot fast, I think they make the switch early. But I think if by, let's say by Memorial Day, if they haven't made the switch yet, even if Suzuki gets hot after that, I don't think they make the switch.
Okay.
So what do you see as the biggest issue with Verlander, or with the roster really? With the, let me rephrase that, with the infielders, outfielders, and catchers, with excluding pitching, what do you see as the biggest issue?
I think hitting with runners in scoring position. And that's because that when you look at the individuals that make up the team, yeah, I mean, strikeouts are just a part of the game now. You could argue a lot against that, but it's not so much as strikeouts, because it's another way of getting out. But I mean, who do you trust to get those RBIs? And that's kind of where I get to, is that, I mean, Hap, but mainly Dansby. I mean, those are kind of your RBI guys, and everyone else that can obviously get guys in, but overall, it's going to be clutch hitting with runners in scoring position, and I think that's the whole, like, I think that's the nerdy hole that you're gonna be able to track like halfway through the year, and it might be rough. But if you're talking about player, I really, so we debated first base, Hosmer, Mancini. I think it's going to come down to somewhat of a. I think it's going to be it's not like his problem, but I do believe in some ways it might become like a Matt Mervis question, and that question may just sit there all year, and that may rub the veterans at first base, DH, the wrong way. So I think that's the biggest thing is first base, DH. Who's going to get reps? Who's going to get play appearances? Are they going to be asked about Matt Mervis like all the time if he doesn't make it out of camp? So I see that as the main issue. What do you think?
So I think so. So I've talked about the catching issue already. The catching issue makes me the most mad, just because that's the most preventative to me. But my worries are really twofold, other than the catching position. So depth is an issue. I don't think that there's really a lot of great depth there. I think
I thought you said death. I thought you said death, and I was like, yeah, I agree. That's concerning.
no, depth. So
Yeah,
I think that they have. So like if you look at the White Sox have a lot of like kind of first base, outfield, DH types in their lineup. Andrew Vaughn, David
yeah,
Sheets, some of
yeah,
those guys, and that is the biggest gripe with White Sox fans. And if you look at the Cubs, Trey Mancini, Patrick Wisdom, like
yeah,
there's a lot of similarities there, and the similarities that I don't like. So that's one. Cody Bellinger, I forgot him too. He falls exactly
yeah,
into that category.
yeah,
And then two prospects are giving me a little bit of heartburn because I think it's time that they get playing time. I don't know where that playing time comes from right now. With one of them, it's a question of health because he had a back injury last year, and it's Brennan Davis.
yeah,
Brennan
yeah,
Davis has been the guy that we've been waiting on for multiple years now. Uh, and when he was healthy last year, granted that was very few and far between, he was Brennan Davis. He was Brennan Davis that
yeah,
Cup fans who are nerds like you and me know and love. Like he was the Brennan Davis that we're all looking forward to.
yeah,
So he's a question mark, and then the other you touched on it is Matt Mervis. Uh,
yeah,
they lack a big power bat in this lineup, other than Patrick Wisdom, who's really their biggest power bat. Uh,
yeah,
they don't have a guy who can really hit a ton of home runs. Matt Mervis,
yeah.
all he's done since he's become a professional baseball player is hit home runs. So
True.
I think you're going to have to make a call at some point where what do you do with what do you do with not Swanson, Mancini, Hosmer, and Wisdom and Bellinger? Is
Yeah,
someone out of those four, if one of them doesn't get hurt, is going to get the short end of the stick and get cut and get DFA'd
yeah,
probably
yeah,
because they're going to have
yeah.
to make room for Mervis. Because if Mervis goes to AAA and hits 20 home runs by July,
Right.
what are we doing here?
I
I
I
don't want
agree.
them. I don't want them trotting out $725,000 Eric Hosmer every day. Like
Yeah,
so, those are really kind of the questions to me. Is like it'll be interesting to see what they do there.
yeah.
Uh,
I
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, no,
I
you're
was
good,
going to say,
bro.
do you want to wrap? Do you want to talk prospects in future and put a bow on this?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of leaning in there. The prospects,
Yeah,
the
talking about
Cubs.
Mervis.
Let me just say this before we start. I only realized this like 2 nights ago. If you look up the top 30 Cubs prospects, two are 25 years old, and the other 28 are younger. That's
Mm-hmm.
insane. Like, so before we get into talking about any of these guys, remember they are under 25 years old. Most of them are 23 and younger. So,
Yeah.
um, so they have a long way ahead of them. They're all they're all young. All right. So, um, last time we talked, so it was right around the end of the regular season last year. You informed me about PCA, Pete Crow Armstrong, now their number one prospect in the top 100 prospects. And you were talking about him. Oh, no, you didn't mention him, but he was the one that got or him and Brendan Davis and Matt Mervis got non-roster invites at spring training. But who of those outfielders, or do you think one or both, are going to be in the near future for the Cubs? Do you think it's Brendan Davis, PCA, or is it both?
So I think this year will be interesting for Brennan Davis. So I think this is the year where the Cubs kind of have to uh, really choose what they want to do with him.
Yeah,
Because if they if he doesn't break camp with the team and come the trade deadline isn't getting starting time or isn't with the major league roster and isn't getting playing time, I think you trade him. Or you decide between. I think. Well, no, I don't even think it's a decision. I think if by that time he's getting stopped right now, I think you make him available because I think you like if you're being a seller at the deadline, Brennan Davis is the type of player where I mean, other than like in terms of the people who are still in that prospect pool, you could get a pretty good return for him. Granted, if he's healthy. And the reason being is just because Pete Crow Armstrong has come on so quickly and has been so good because they play the same position. They're both center fielders.
Right.
So I think this year, because Brennan Davis's ticket to the major leagues this year, I think, is either Cody Bellinger gets hurt or Cody Bellinger can't hit his weight.
Yeah.
If Bellinger come June can't hit his weight, I think we see Brennan Davis start to play center field almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
If Cody Bellinger is MVP Cody Bellinger without the shift and is going to be up for comeback player of the year, then you have a decision to make. And in that case, I'm kind of now talking myself into the fact that then they would probably trade Bellinger and bring up Davis. So I think it's a matter of how serious do you want to be about this year. If you don't want to be serious and you're still going to make deals at the deadline, one of those deals is hypothetically probably going to include Cody Bellinger. And then you bring up Brennan Davis if he's healthy.
Yeah. I'm very interested in what they're going to do with him. I have no idea. I mean, it really just depends on so many variables that it's hard to predict. But he's either a part of their future or he's a part of a trade package to get someone at the deadline, like if they need a closer or they need a catcher or something, they might package a top prospect like Brendan Davis to get him, get someone, or they trade Bell. Like there's so many variables, but Brendan Davis, either he's going to be traded for a piece, or he's going to be in the lineup this year or next.
Yeah. And then I think the gem of the prospect pool is Pete Crow Armstrong. I think the kid's the real deal. I mean, he was amazing last year. He flew up to Double-A, or he flew up to High A. This year he's going to make Double-A. I think if he has a strong camp, they might start him in Double-A. I think he's still at least 2 years away, but he could be. I mean, Ian Happ only played minor league ball for a year and a half before he came up. Pete Crow Armstrong could be. Kyle Schwarber, I think, played a year of minor league ball before he made the major league roster. Pete Crow Armstrong. I mean, if the year has really gone sideways and they're gonna win 70 games this year because either everybody underperformed or everybody got hurt. I mean, there is a universe where we could see Pete Crow Armstrong playing in Wrigley Field in September. I don't think that's out of the question.
True.
I think that'll tell you how bad the year has gone if that happens. But there is a universe in which Pete Crow Armstrong is playing Major League Baseball at Wrigley Field this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, they have a lot of outfield prospects, so I'm very interested to see what they do. I'm not every prospect you call up is going to like hit it and be a starter, for sure. I mean, even the top prospects, they're not guarantees, but we're excited about them for sure. So this is the one thing is that after looking at the schedule for the year, now that they're not playing the Pirates and Reds, and they're not playing them as many times, and I don't think I think overall the Central is going to have like less wins overall. And they're going to be fighting for. I mean, 1 through 3 is going to be a fight, but I think the Cardinals take it overall. But yeah, I mean, there could be a surprise where the Cubs come up big. But if the Cubs are not in the fold for a wild card spot, like in September, I mean, why would you not bring up like some guys that you have confidence in? And again, it depends on how healthy they are. Because what's to stop Bellinger or Hep from getting injured? And they need to call up someone quick and give him a shot. I mean, Pico Armstrong is 20 years old. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about you, but at 20 years old, there's not many guys who are ready for the pros at 20. There are some, but as hard as you may start, 20 years old, that's a bit fast. So, but Brennan Davis being 23 and having to go through some things, I don't see why you don't call him up when they add roster spots at the end of the year, or a freak injury. But I think those two guys are definitely in the conversation of, what if prospects, or not what if, but like if something happens.
Yeah. So there's another one of those outfield prospects who I think we may see at some point is Kevin Alcantara. Similar to Mervis, he hit a bunch of home runs last year. He came from the Yankees. I think the website, how they list like what level they're going to be at, they list him at Major League, but I think he's going to start in AAA. A name to look out for, who I think one pitcher who I think we'll see at Wrigley at some point, and then another pitcher he was a draft pick this past year who is going to be fun to follow. So the one who we think we'll see at Wrigley, I've mentioned him already, is Ben Brown. He has a 60 grade fastball, and his breaking stuff sits between grade 50 and 55. Last year he made it to Double-A, and he went 3-0 in 7 starts. So he came in that David Robertson deal. So I think Ben Brown is going to be a guy that we see. He has a fastball that sits upper 90s. And then the guy and when they made this pick, because I watched, because there a lot of times there was nothing else to do. I watched a lot of the College World Series games, and so I saw this guy play, was Cade Horton. He was the 7th pick in the draft. Cubs picked him at number 7. Pitcher from Oklahoma. Freak athlete, and he has a 60 grade fastball, and he has a 65 grade slider. I mean, this guy's slider, he threw it a lot. He obviously threw it a lot in College World Series. It sits 90, 89, 90, and there are a couple sliders he threw last year in the College World Series that started behind a right-handed batter and then ended up in the other batter's box just because of the amount of break he had.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a true wipeout slider. Like, he will be really, 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 really fun to watch.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Cade Horton, that was his first full year as solely a pitcher. I think before then he was doing double duty in the field in that bat, and last year was his first full year. And you are like the most dominant pitcher, so I would be surprised if they called them up quickly or
they're not going to call
year.
them up.
Yeah. So I mean, the one guy I've watched some stuff on him and seen him produce and heard some interviews is Jordan Wicks. a left-handed pitcher. I mean, the Cubs don't have. They have some in the starting lineup, but again, who knows what's going to happen? And just talking about all these young guys and the starters. But Jordan Wicks has put up some numbers, and he has been pretty consistent. He's worked his way up. He's 23 as well, so he's not like 20. He's not unproven. So I'm interested to see if he gets a call at some point. But yeah, I'm interested to see if Ben Brown, again, as you said, we just got from the Phillies, which I feel like is such a weird. We got him for David Robertson like one half of the year, and now he's with the Mets. So, I mean, Ben Brown, welcome to the team if you can make it. So,
Right. And then there's two guys I got for you who I need to see more out of this year. One is local kid, shortstop Ed Howard. He had injury issues last year. He only played 23 games. But between low A and high A, his slash line is bad. It's like barely 600. Between the two levels, he'd slash 229, 287 on base, and 315 slugging. For a shortstop, that's pretty bad. And then the other is Miguel Amaya. Health has been an issue. I feel like we've talked about him for so long, and Cup fans have been waiting. For a while, it was like him and Brennan Davis were the two saviors coming to save this team. But he hasn't hit better than 260 in the minors. Last year, I think was his career high average. It was like 262. And then but he is a great defender. He has a great arm. He threw a lot of guys out stealing bases last year. When he's been healthy, the minor league staff really loves him. The Cubs love him. But you got to stay healthy, and maybe you become the catcher of the future. But the only you got to be available.
Right. But again, he's still young, so we'll see if he stays healthy, if he learns from Tucker and Young Gums. He's still projected to be on the roster. I don't know if he will be, but hopefully he gets some time with them at some point to learn as well. The last thing I'll say is that I did not know much about him. The last prospect for me is Alexander Canario. So, Canario, 2017, he was in rookie ball. Last year, he went from high A to double A to triple A. And overall, he hit 37 home runs.
He was who I was thinking of, not Alcantara.
All right, so
when I said
him, that guy, I'm interested to see if somehow that's a fluke. But again, if you look back to his the years before, let me just check to see if I got those numbers right. Yeah, I mean, 2 years before he had 18 home runs, and then 16 the year before, and last year he had a breakout year. I mean, in Double A alone, he had 24 home runs. So, I mean, he's a prospect that I didn't even know too much about, or I didn't even hear his name mentioned, and he's out there like Matt Mervis hitting home runs. So, I think he may have gotten a non-roster invite to spring training. I think he might have, but either way, I mean, the Cubs, again, let me state it this: the Cubs' top 30 prospects, 28 are under 25, and the other 2 are 25 years old. So, if the Cubs prospects of those 30, if the Cubs just have 3 that hit in like our long term, that's, I mean, what, That's 10%. If 10% of their top 30 prospects are good, that's a good sign for the Cubs. And they're all young. So this year, next year, I don't know who it's going to be, but they have a lot of options. See who can handle it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. Yeah, it's an interesting time to be a Cub fan. I mean, not we were spoiled for a little bit. We hit on multiple prospects in a row. I mean, 2016 alone, we had Jorge Soler come up. We had Addison Russell, who was good for a little while. We had Javi. We had Bryant. Rizzo wasn't really. He was kind of a prospect. Rizzo, like
Yeah.
Contreras, Hendricks, like we got really spoiled. And then after
Yeah.
that, we had Schwarber, we had Happ.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a
yeah.
crazy run.
Yeah. And all it took was some really hard years for Cubs fans who just won a World Series, and now it's start to look like they may have something. But so just moving on real quick to the future. What are your thoughts for this season, and when do you think, if it's not this season, what year is the year the Cubs, compete not just for the wild card, but can compete for the best in the division?
So I think so this year the Vegas has set their over under on wins at 77. Personally, I'm going to take the over. I think 77 is pretty low. Because I do think that they're going to be like talking through the roster with you. Like on paper, I can see why 77 makes sense, but it's assuming that a lot of these guys are going to underperform, who I don't think are going to underperform. I think 2024. So like if I want to equate it to like 2016 and the year that they had then, I think 2024 is going to be similar to 2015, where we think like, oh, it's possible, and they kind of come on a little bit out of nowhere, where you're like, oh, like they've got a lot of really good talent. And then I think 2025 is the year where, by then, I think 2 years is when we really start to see something come together, and we better be fighting for top of the division and signing somebody in addition to Dansby Swanson, who can be a cornerstone guy.
Like Shohei Ohtani?
I'm in. Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Give him an ownership stake. I'm serious. Give him $500 million in an ownership stake. Like whatever it takes.
In the city, not in the team, in the city. I agree.
Sure. Give him. Tell him when he retires from baseball, he can be the CEO of the Marquee Network. Like.
Yeah,
give him anything he wants.
Dude, I agree. The Cubs are the fourth highest. They're the fourth highest revenue winning team in baseball. So they have no money. That's hard. But anyway, so I disagree in this sense. I think this year is going to trim out the players that are those 1-year deals or option of 2-year deals. I think it's going to trim out the veterans who they don't see as long term. I think this year is 2015 where they may make a wild card push. They may miss. They'll probably miss it, because the NL East is going to dominate like they did last year. It's not going to be. It's going to be just 3 teams from the East. So they're not going to have a wild card spot. And that's fine. But if they are, close, I think this year they're close to making the wild card, but they miss out. I think next year, I think is I don't think they're going to win the World Series. I think next year they will compete for the division. no slight on the Cardinals and their I slight on the Brewers because their lineup is decimated. But the Cardinals, I mean, I'm not even putting it past them that they could, get hot like they did last year. But if I'm looking at the Cubs and their prospects and what they've done so far and what they're hopefully going to do in the next offseason, I think this year is 2015. Next year they make the playoffs and they're up there.
Yeah, I think for sure. Like, I think if everybody stays healthy and performs how they have historically, I think they can make a playoff push this year, or at least be frisky.
Yeah.
But last year, my first year being a season ticket holder, I was not really that excited to go to games all that much, just because they weren't fun to watch at times. Like they were bad. This year, yeah. I'm excited. This year, I'm excited to see some of the young guys because last year I was trotting out a lot of Frank Schwindel, a lot of Rafael Ortega, Alfonso Rivas, who you knew weren't going to be there. So and this year is going to be the start of seeing some of those guys who will be here for a long time, and they may not be very good, but I'm willing to watch bad baseball if I'm watching Brennan Davis play. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say.
Yeah, true. And again, as a season ticket holder, you're going to be able to see this the first year that every baseball team is playing every baseball team throughout the year. Yeah. So you're going to be able to see some games against teams that you may not have seen. It is crazy. Last thing is that it is crazy that this is like a new thought. Like, let's have Mike Trout play in every city. Like, how ridiculous of an idea is it to be like, only every 3 years will they play this team, but every 6 years you'll be able to see Mike Trout. It's like, bro, like every year so hopefully you're going to be able to go to some really cool games. So that's good.
I'm excited.
Yeah. And so if you've been with us now, I think for over an hour and like 50 minutes, thank you. That is a little bit crazy, but we watch the Cubs a lot. If you guys are watching, again, if you're watching, listening still, you like the Cubs and you're getting into the data and the minutia details about everything and everyone. So hopefully we'll be able to do this a little bit more and they won't be as long, but this is before the spring training even starts. So the year will get crazier as the progresses. So this will wrap up the special episode. I don't even know what episode number it'll be, but the special episode of the Family Based Pod. My name is Jake.
I'm also Jake. Thank you for having me. I'm always happy to come on and talk, and I'll talk to Status Report during the year also. We'll always be happy to come on and talk about it once the season gets rocking.
Well, I'm gonna hold you to it because you just said you'll always be excited. So I'm gonna test that a little bit. So
go for it.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next week, next episode, whatever it might be. Have a good week. Bye.
Hey, I'm Eden. Thanks for watching this episode of my dad's podcast. Check out the links in the description to follow the podcast on TikTok, Instagram, and the other social media. Make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell to let you know when there's a new episode. Thanks for watching or listening. Bye.